Hello everybody, Vigo'sShadow here, and today I'm releasing the last part of the Shangri-La summon, or like the summons, the trio banner, and we have Fighting Game Master OiKatzo. This one did release 2 days ago, at least when we're starting at this point of the video. Um, I did pull this unit, I did pull him, but the thing is with that is, I wasn't able to capture it. The video didn't go, so that's why we skipped to this part right away. Usually I just show it, but it was pretty laggy anyway, so I mean, we're just going to dip right into the character. So we're going to go to the max stats right off the bat. Here we have power to healing boost to overheal, and the grouping of human and other. Now, since all these are actually human, you could probably get some pretty good comps with Anaros and like human teams. I could see that going really, really well. But this video is about OiKatzo, so let's go right into it. Alright, here we have him, OiKatzo, Fighting Game Master. I think I said that right, but I'm not sure. Either way, let's get into his ultimate, Dark Overstrike. Now, with this one, you raise your own attack by 80% for 20 seconds, and then you also raise the defense by 80% for 20 seconds. Further grants invincibility for 10 seconds. Now, right off the bat, that's actually really, really good. That's a 3-in-1 move. Obviously, those are super valued, but this one is like, it doesn't do any damage, which is good, because we don't want that as a tank. Not really. We don't want that, like, it's very minimal damage that the tanks can do with that, unless you have, like, you know, obviously a supported boosting unit that boosts tanks like Lambda. Either way, raise his own attack by 80% for 20 seconds, so the tank is actually going to be doing, I'd say, kind of some pretty decent damage. I don't know. I'd have to, like, test that out, because I wouldn't know how much the tanks can do, because, you know, obviously their attack stat is going to be lowered, so they might be doing just as much as the regular attackers, maybe a little bit more for that 20 seconds, so that'd be interesting to see. Maybe if you did pair it up with Lambda, even though we don't have a green Lambda, so you'd be missing out on a whole 200% of damage inflicted, maybe we could see, like, pretty good damage that the tank's doing by themselves too, so either way, that's pretty notable for the tank to do, like, at least give a boost with the damage. But here's the better part of that. Also raises defense by 80% for 20 seconds. Now that's absolutely nuts, because we haven't had a unit like that that can raise, or a tank like that that can raise their defense that high. Maybe there was an SF or an event in the mix that had this, or like somewhat of a similar value, but that's a very high percentage for defense. So, like, the enemies are going to be virtually probably doing not a whole lot. Like, you're gonna be tanking a lot of damage with that, and with a healer by your side, you won't. I guarantee you're probably not gonna be dying within that 20 seconds unless the boss, like, whips something else out that's just gonna probably wipe your team. Like, if this unit dies, if he dies, then your whole team is dead for sure, because he should be the only one realistically surviving anything with that much defense. But it's also good to note that we have invincibility, so this unit theoretically shouldn't be taking any damage for 10 seconds, which is nice. So you get that 80% after the 10 seconds of actually taking damage, and that damage is not going to be barely anything. So you pretty much have, it's almost like 20 seconds of invincibility if we really want to look at that. Let's just take a look at what this looks like. Awaken, probably like a little boost, probably. Actually, no. This one is a pretty considerable jump in the boost there. Raises the defense by 120. That's a 40% jump. That's actually very, very, very good. Doesn't change the amount of invincibility, so there's that. Still pretty good. This is a really, really good move for tanks. Let's move on from that and go to Dual Impact, and this one lowers the defense of a single enemy by 20% for 10 seconds, further inflicts 200% damage, and knockback by 200 centimeters. So again, I'll explain, like, knockback and why that's kind of important, or not really, because, like, what knockback does is that it's going to knock the enemies back. Captain Obvious moment there, but in PvP, you're gonna have you can expose a unit. So this is where it actually becomes useful. Like, if you were to knock back the tank, you're opening up that mid lane to get attacked, because the tank is no longer in the front. So you're exposing that mid lane, which is very, very good. That is if it targets the tank, and I think it should, because if we're talking about single enemy, I think it just defaults to attacking the tank, so that could prove itself to be very useful in PvP. Outside of it, like dungeons and stuff, I don't see it being useful unless you are knocking back, like, because they do have like tanky enemies in dungeons sometimes. So when you're knocking that back and exposing some of the mid lane or maybe even the back lane, it's only by 200%, 200 centimeters, so you might not even be able to get that depending on where they're placed. That's when knockback comes into play, when you're exposing the weaker units that you can essentially try to kill them or do a little bit more damage on them. So that's when knockback is actually good. The damage factor is not much. It's just 100% more of standard or like normal attack, and then pretty much the most noteworthy thing here is the lowers defense of a single enemy by 20% for 10 seconds. When this one goes off, you're gonna probably want to do all your hidden techniques and try to synergize that with anything else that would lower their defense or make it the boss weaker, and then plan your hidden techniques around this dual impact. Either way, let's check out what it looks like awakened. And we have 100% more damage, not really that good, and 10% more of the defense, which, it's just 10%, so it's not the best thing on the awakened, probably not going to be the best thing on the awakening roadmap. So, moving on, we have Whip Puppet Snake, and what this one does is lowers the attack of a single enemy with the highest attack by 40% for 10 seconds. Now this is actually going to be pretty good for PvP again, so it seems like this one is kind of like leaning towards a PvP unit. Yeah, so lowers attack of a single enemy with the highest attack by 40% for 10 seconds. Further inflicts seal for 10 seconds if it's yellow elemental, so that could actually prove itself to be very useful on the yellow bosses for sure. And it's increasing the team's survivability because you're targeting specifically the highest attacker. And for bosses, I mean, that's gonna be very significant. Let's see what that looks like awakened here. We actually have a 20% jump to 60%, which is pretty good. Yeah, that boss is pretty much you're actually saving your team a whole lot with that percentage. Even if it's 10 seconds, if this thing happens to go off before the hidden technique on the boss's end, that's gonna be really good. But you're still going to probably need to back yourself up with like maybe a strike combo for defense or something like that. That just happens to be by chance, but either way, you're avoiding a lot of damage for 10 seconds on your team. So that's pretty good. And it seals them, so that's nice too. Alright, now let's check out the last move here. We got Fighting Game Master, and when your own HP falls below 50%, you're reducing your own damage received by 20% permanent, and shields damage of 200%, so that's actually 100% more than like a standard shield, so that's nice, of all allies by 15%. So I'm not sure if OiKatzo is included in that. I'm not sure if he will get a shield or not. I'm not sure if it's just all allies and not him. But either way, if it's a shield on him, that's nice, because otherwise, like in PvP, if like you might be able to get wiped out at like pretty quickly after 50%, but a shield on him would be nice if you're able to do that. But still, you're also protecting your mid lane and your your healer probably as well, or back line. So you're able to do that with this shield move. That's pretty nice. It's going to be very useful for PvP. You might not see that go off in like bosses, especially when the bosses are really weak. So you might not even see this go off. But that means it's pretty good. You know, your tank is doing its job of not dying and taking a lot of damage. So this one might be very hard to get to, especially when you have Dark Overstrike. You might want to use this move after you fall below 50%. So I could see this being very good for comps where you have 4 attackers and 1 tank, and then as soon as this tank goes below that 50% threshold, gets a shield on everyone, then go for your ultimate and take even less damage, or wait for the shield to diminish, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, it's very. It depends on where you're at. This move might, trigger or not. Now let's go ahead and check out the full art. I do like the emphasis on the flaming fists. That's awesome. However, the background is digital and it does fit. It's very fitting. So I do like that. But I am more of a background type of person, so there's not much to look at here. So I'd probably rate this one a 6 out of 10, maybe less, maybe a 5 out of 10. But I don't want to be too critical now. It's only because it's the character, and the biggest appeal is the flaming fists. Either way, moving on. Let's go on to the skill section, but go all the way to the normal attack. This one's a 4 hit. Of course, it just only gets to 100%. Now let's check out what we all want to know is the magic gear here. Let's check it out. Let's hit max right away. Every 5 seconds after the start of the wave, shields damage of all green elemental allies. Now that, right off the bat, is pretty huge because you are essentially getting, so if you do 10 seconds, you get a 100% shield. This is constant shield for everybody, and I could see this being extremely helpful for PvP. And then we got the other factor for it. It is the provoke. So you get that shield for 15 seconds, and then you also get provoke on all enemies for 5 seconds. Now, if this goes off every 5 seconds after the start of the wave, and it provokes on all enemies for 5 seconds, theoretically, this unit is going to be provoking the enemies all the time. So that's actually extremely well. I could see that being so good in PvP, and just in general too. For anything, provoke is so good for a tank. So the fact that this is on the magic gear, you must get this magic gear. You have to, and put that on because that provoke is so good. Just keep in mind that OiKatzo does not have any defense until there's other standard tanks are gonna have a skill that they throw up. It is 30% defense reduction, or 30% defense for 10 seconds. So they at least get that. OiKatzo does not. OiKatzo is going to be only getting the damage reduction when or reducing own damage received by 20%, and that actually jumps up to 40%. I don't know if I showed that, but yeah, 20%. And that's going to be permanent, so at least there's a permanent factor with that, but you have to get below that in order to have that go. It does help with the shields though, so I mean that's something as well. But let's just go into the Awakening roadmap because I haven't done that. And they actually give the best one right away. It is A1 hidden technique, Dark Overstrike Plus. That is crazy that they give that right away. So A1 is really, really good for OiKatzo, and you can get that done with the event. You don't even have to, you pull it and you're done. It goes to A1 immediately if you grind out that event, so definitely grind out that event for that A1. It is so worth it. A2 is that Whip Puppet Snake for that 20% extra, lowering the highest attack. I'd say that's probably mid, especially for if we're talking PvP sense, and some bosses for sure. A3 is the Dual Impact. I'd say that's kind of low tier, not good. A3, not really noteworthy. A4 is the Magic Gear slot, and A5 tucked away her other best ability, which is the 40% instead of 20%, and it's gonna definitely make a difference for sure, especially if it's permanent. That one's really, really good too. So the only noteworthy ones are A1 and A5. So either beginning or end. But either way, having her at him at an A1 is gonna be very comfortable. So that pretty much takes care of all the abilities, the Awakening roadmap, and everything else. Now the big question is, should I pull for Fighting Game Master OiKatzo? And what I gotta say is, honestly, he's a pretty good tank. He can do a lot of damage reduction, and the whole thing with this tank is being able to take a lot of damage, and that's what this tank does really well. I could see it being very high in the tiers for PvP especially, but if you have Shared Silence Epsilon, I mean, you're better off not pulling that, because Shared Silence Epsilon is one of the best green tanks there is, and pretty much cannot be replaced at this point. This one is a good one for like those who are really looking for a green tank on their teams, on their team comps. He's not a bad idea, but like here's the thing though, like he does support the allies pretty well by adding a shield, like not only once but twice. And he's also able to provoke all the enemies. So this one is a very high tier tank. I'm not going to downplay this tank for sure, because this one, if we're talking about like tier list rankings, like Shared Silence Epsilon goes in that SS++ tier that I had for that one video. So like God tier unit, whereas this one is like an amazing or a great unit. So just a tier or 2 tiers below that one. But still, very, very good tank. I personally, I don't have trouble with my green tank dying, even though it's NPC Technique Sid, which is not too good at this point with all the other green tanks going around. So, I mainly put my focus into like having better green attackers at this point. So, but if your green tanks are dying and your team is getting wrecked, and you just need that extra defense or not to get hurt as much, this is definitely a good pickup. It'll prove pretty useful, not only in dungeons and bosses, but PvP as well. This one's a great PvP unit, by the way. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say for that one. Vigo, signing off.